Thanks.
You're too young.
Good morning and welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. Wouldn't it be lovely to get your prayers answered? Chuck, how would you feel about getting your prayers answered every time?
I did.
Oh, he did.
No, I didn't. I didn't pray for that.
Well, you got to watch what you pray for.
Every prayer is always answered. Sometimes the answer is no.
You got to watch what you pray for. Sometimes the answer is no. Well, how do you get your prayer answered positive? Wouldn't it be nice, Steve, to be able to get your prayer answered on time every time? There are 3 people in Jewish history who did so.
Abraham.
Not Abraham. Let's try.
Sarah.
Moses.
No. Moses, yes. I mean, keep guessing. Keep going. One of them is a Gentile in the 6th Torah portion. One of them is a Gentile in this week's Torah portion. Let's take a look.
What page are you
I'm on page
What world are you in?
139. Here it is. Page 139. What happens is at the beginning of the Torah portion this week, Parshas Chayei. Good morning, friend from North Florida. The beginning of the Torah portion begins with the passing of Sarah. She passes away, and she's at the ripe old age of 127 years old. Abraham decides that it's time to get a shidduch for his one and only son, Eliezer, Yitzchak. So Yitzchak is older, 37 years old. So he asks his servant, Eliezer, his Gentile servant, to go and find a wife for Yitzchak. Yitzchak travels from Be'er-Sheva, I think that's where they were in Be'er-Sheva, in the south of Israel, all the way through to Iraq.
7 Springs.
Yeah, he crossed over the rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, and he went all the way to Aram Naharaim, which is somewhere in southern Iraq. Now, it's quite a journey. How long does it take to, is that direct flight from Beersheba to Aram Naharaim? I don't think so. Right? For 50 years, there were no direct flights between Tehran and Tel Aviv. This past summer, the only flights out of Israel were direct flights to Tehran. So, what? They wouldn't land. They didn't do any landings. They just do deliveries. They're just doing deliveries. So, what happens here is it's actually a 7-day journey. I've never actually tried this journey by land, but it's a 7-day journey by foot, by camel, actually, from Be'er-Sheva to southern Iraq.
That's our next trip.
Yeah, I don't want to do it by foot, actually. It doesn't sound very exciting to me. But yeah, it's a 7-day trip. It would be nice to go in the footsteps of our forefathers, right? Yeah. But Eliezer does it in 1 day. I mean, this is crazy. Eliezer does it in 1 single day. Take a look at what he says. Just give you the overview of the story. Eliezer is going to find a wife for his wife, for his master's son, for Yitzchak. He comes to the well. He decides he rocks up in town. He stops up at the well, and he says, "Okay, God, please find me the right woman." And then she appears. Right? Then he gives her gifts, and he asks to speak to her father. And when he speaks to her father, listen to what he has to say to her father.
Are you still on page 139?
I'm jumping around a little bit. I'll tell you exactly where I am. Here. Here, I'm on page 143 right now. I'm just finding the exact words that I'm looking for right now. The exact words are, and I came today. Does anybody see those words? And I came today. It's a very long narrative in Torah. It's quite unusual to have such a long narrative, which is actually repeated in such great detail. 142, where is it?
42.
Where?
It says,
Oh, verse 42? Oh, very good. Fantastic. Good. Verse 42. So on page 143, it says like this. So Eliezer meets the parents, right? Let's start at verse 33 on page 143. Food was served, but Eliezer said, "I will not eat until I've spoken my piece." Laban said, "Speak. Good thing you didn't eat first, because they wanted to poison him. They wanted to poison him and steal his wealth that he came with." Eliezer began, "I am Abraham's servant." What a great way to start a conversation. I am Abraham's servant. Now, you see over here the coarseness of the English language. Here you see the coarseness of the English language, because in the original Hebrew it says, Vayomar, and he said, Eved Avraham Anochi, the servant of Abraham am I. In English it says, I am Abraham's servant. What's the difference? They say you shouldn't start your sentences with I. You start too many sentences with I, you get a problem. Somebody once wrote a letter to the Rebbe complaining that she had no friends. So all the Rebbe did is that he circled the first word of each paragraph. And that was our answer. The Rebbe pointed out that you're a little self-absorbed. Maybe that's why you have no friends, right? So in English it says, I am Abraham's servant. But in the original Hebrew, Eved Avraham Anochi, the servant of Abraham, am I. It's like Manis Friedman said here in Shabbos, instead of saying, I love you, where you are the afterthought, and I am the dominant, turn it around and say, you I love. You I love. Say it that way, right? Anyways, God greatly blessed my master, and he prospered. He granted him flocks, cattle, silver, and gold, bondsmen and bondswomen, camels and donkeys. What are bondsmen and bondswomen? Are they like mortgage lenders? I'm joking. My master's wife, Sarah, bore my master a son, and after she had grown old, and he gave him all that he owned. At this point, Eliezer showed them the document attesting to this fact. My master bound me by an oath, do not take a wife of my son from amongst the daughters of the Canaanites in which I live, unless you go first to my father's house, to my family, to select a wife for my son from amongst them, propose the marriage to her, and if she refuses to come back with you, then maybe we can look into the locals. I said to my master, in that case, an angel certainly approached me and asked me to give my daughter to your son as a wife. Eliezer was hoping that Yitzchak would marry his own daughter. For the maiden whom I shall choose from amongst the family members in Haran will certainly not agree to come back with me. I mean, he was clearly a pessimist, right? Or maybe he was trying to influence the deal. He very much wanted his daughter to marry Eliezer. But Abraham said to me, God before whom I've always walked will send his angel with you and make your mission successful. That's pretty cool to have his angel go with you, right? Is that nice? And you will take a wife of my son from amongst my family members and from my father's house. So Abraham's faith is strong. He's like, listen, dude, don't mess with me. God is going to provide. It's going to be good. I'm not afraid of Mamdani, nothing. It's going to be all right. Eliezer could not, of course, tell Bethuel and Lavan that God had granted him success in advance. So he only said that God promised to send his angel with him rather than before him. There's another nuance here. Earlier, when Abraham was actually sending Eliezer, he said, and God will send his angel before you. That's quite a nice assurance of success. But here, when he recounts the story, Eliezer is talking to the father-in-law. He says, God, that Abraham said to me, God will send his angel with you. Why did he change it? Why did he change the wording? The Rebbe points out that the reason why he changed the wording is because it would be inappropriate to say to Bethuel, to the father of the bride, that God has sent his angel before me. Because if God sent the angel before me, then it means it's a pre-done deal.
Oh, okay.
What were you going to say?
That maybe that Bethuel had encountered the angel and hadn't recognized him, so it's an embarrassment.
Well, the question would be, why would we need Bethuel's buy-in? Because the angel's already brokered the deal, and he no longer has freedom of choice. So it would be disrespectful to say to him, imagine you walked into a business deal and say, look, God has already approved this deal. I know it's going to happen. Now would you like to sign the document? And the guy was like, oh, okay, fine. Let God sign the document for you. You know, he might not take it well, right? So that's why there's a slight deviation from the original instruction. But either way, you see that Eliezer is certainly being carried by the angel of God. He didn't, however, note that God had promised to make his mission successful, hinting that it would be fruitless for Bethuel to attempt to oppose it. Only thus will you be free of my oath, said Abraham to Eliezer. If you approach my family and they do not give you a maiden, you will be released from my oath. So I set out on my journey today, and I miraculously arrived today at the spring. Today, it's a 7-day journey.
Unbelievable.
How does that even happen? Even though the journey from Hebron, sorry, it was Hebron, it wasn't Beersheba. The journey from Hebron to here normally takes more than 1 day, much more, 7 days. I said, oh God of my master Abraham, if you will crown this mission that I'm undertaking with success here. So basically, I mean, he arrives in 1 single day. That's a concept called Kvitzas Haderech. James, we're using a Chumash. This is the Chumash, it's the Bible. We're using the Kahut version of the Bible. Interesting. It says that the Japanese did not have a word for I until it became westernized. It was always we until the West influenced them. That's interesting. I think there's an island somewhere in the Pacific or the Indian Ocean that they don't have a term for possession. Like they don't have an apostrophe. for possession. You know, Steve's car, right? Jonathan's dog. They don't have the apostrophe for possession because in their culture, it's all collective. It's an interesting concept. Anyways.
It's called Marxism. Marxism of the Polynesian.
So what happens here is that Eliezer is experiencing a phenomenon called kfitzas haderech, the jumping of the way, the shortening of the journey. My grandfather-in-law, Rabbi Yehuda Krinsky, is the Rebbe's personal secretary, chief of staff. He was with the Rebbe since 1956 or 57, I think. He would drive the Rebbe all the time. Now, the Rebbe's schedule was a little,
Chaotic.
I wouldn't say chaotic, disrespectful,
Full.
but I would
Full,
say
full, yeah.
extremely full. And the Rebbe was maybe unexpected.
Mhm.
So when the Rebbe said he wants to go somewhere, the Rebbe Krinsky would go, right? Now, sometimes the Rebbe would often go to visit his father-in-law's burial site, the Ohel in Queens. He'd go there often and he'd be there as long as he needed to be there. Sometimes he came back on a Friday afternoon, not considering the traffic. Now, there's a problem because it takes 45 minutes to get from the Ohel to 770 in traffic in rush hour on a Friday afternoon. And there's 15 minutes left. So what are we going to do? So Krinsky's like a true chassid. He gets in the car and he puts the pedal to the metal, right? He guns it. He tells the story that he turned on Springfield Boulevard to get out of the Queens Cemetery. And as he turned onto Springfield Boulevard, he's on Eastern Parkway.
This is what?
He's on Eastern Parkway in
Oh,
Brooklyn.
You're right.
And he's like, okay. You know what happened? But he was there and a minute in time. There was you can ask him the story. It's a good story. But there was some sort of a kfitzas haderech, a jumping of the journey. So clearly, Eliezer is experiencing divine intervention in the most extraordinary and beautiful way. But the story gets even better when you look at the prayer that he makes on page 139. Let's take a look at the prayer. So we're going back a little bit. This is the original narrative. It's not the retelling of the story that he tells to the father of the bride, right? It's the actual occurrence of the events. What happens is he shows up with his 10 masters, 10 camels, and he's got the bill of ownership of all of his master's possessions. Avram's possessions have been given to his son Yitzchak as a gift in order to entice the bride to want to marry, right? So here's what happens. Eliezer shows up in the middle of the page, 139, verse 12. He said, "Oh God of my master Abraham, arrange events for me this day such that you grant a favor to my master Abraham. Here I stand by the spring of water, and the daughters of the townsmen are coming out to draw water. Let it be that the maiden to whom I say, please tilt your pitcher so that I may drink, and who replies, drink, and I will also give you water to your men and camels, will be the one to whom you have designated for your servant Isaac." I mean, that's quite a tall order. I'm going to ask one maiden here for a drink. And if she says, you want a drink? I'll give you a drink. I'll give all your men a drink and all your camels a drink. I mean, I've never given a camel to drink, but I'm going to safely assume
They drink a lot.
that it's more than a glass of water.
Pretty minimal criteria for choosing a wife.
Yeah. I mean, this sounds like a whole day operation here.
I call it that's maximum.
This sounds like a 1099 job over here. I mean, this sounds like she's going to need to hire people. I mean, this is a serious operation. It's a contract. You, your men, and your 10 camels? How much does a camel drink, for heaven's sake? I wouldn't even know. Mordechai, how much does a camel drink? What do you think?
No, couldn't. Voila.
42.7 gallons.
40, what,
Stop.
42.7 gallons. All right, fine.
Find out.
So let's see. So she will be a fitting match because her demonstration of considerateness and generosity will prove that she's worthy of becoming a part of Abraham's household. Let her be from his family and a suitable companion for Isaac. Thus, I will know through her that you have acted kindly with my master. He basically gave God a test. I'm going to ask this question. If she gives this answer, then I will know that we found the right one. In other words, he's basically solved the whole dating dilemma. I mean, imagine if people just did this for dating. Right? They said, listen, God, I don't want to get complicated over here. You know what I mean? I don't want to mess around with the wrong people. So God, I'm ready to start dating. I'm going to ask the first eligible maiden this question, Yeah, the first
Give
woman
me
I
a
see.
drink of water.
Give me a drink of water. And if she comes back with, you know what? I'm going to give you a drink of water and I'm going to fill up your car with gas.
That's
Right.
it.
Rabbi,
Then
Deal.
she's the one.
Deal
I mean,
done.
whoa,
Deal
that would be
done.
amazing.
I was very close. 40 gallons.
40 gallons. How much does your car take?
Is that a dromedary or a?
Yeah, Dromedaris is one.
Honda.
Yeah, what about the double
Or
hump?
you have
He's
the-
got 2 tanks.
You have the African camel.
The African cow's got
The,
two tanks in there. So,
So there's up to 40 gallons. So it could
up to 40. How much? How many gallons in a car?
20 to 30.
20 out of 30?
How long you been married?
SUV? How many gallons in your SUV, Rob?
They don't have big tanks anymore.
No?
No,
I used to have an SUV.
You're right, 20.
20, give or take.
If you're a hybrid, 20.
So each camel is 2 cars, okay? So she's filling up 20 cars worth of gas over here, right? I mean, wouldn't this be lovely to be able to solve the dating crisis this manner? What were you going to say, Mordechai?
The Eliezer prayer, is that related? I know on Passover we leave a table for Eliezer. Is that?
It's not Elijah. You're mixing up your e's.
Oh.
There's Eliezer, servant of Abraham, and Elijah, the prophet, who turned into an angel. 2 different people. They have the same initial, so that counts. But other than that, then 2 different people, 2 different eras. Okay, so back to the story. So what happens? He had not yet finished speaking, folks, and this is the key term here.
Yeah.
He hadn't even finished speaking. He didn't even finish talking when, block your ears, 3-year-old Rebecca
Yeah.
came out. You didn't hear that part.
No, we
She had
didn't.
been born to Bethuel, the youngest son of Milcah, the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor. Her picture was on her shoulder. Oh, ears perked up.
I remember last year you had something to say about that. Something that you had resolved it since then?
Now she's a year older now.
Eliezer Epstein.
Oh no!
Oh,
Come
yeah,
on.
yeah.
You
Does
prick.
it say in the text 3 years old?
No, it does not say in the text
Okay,
years
so
old.
there you go.
Just remember something very simple. Abraham lived to 175 years old. Okay, puberty, maturity, all that stuff was different in those days. Okay, Noah lived till 900 and way up there. You know what I mean? It says that Moses was 10 cubits high. You know how much a cubit is?
Yeah.
2 feet. Right, it's a cubit, 2 feet. Is this 2 feet or 1 foot?
Yeah.
2 feet. It's 20 feet tall. Okay, you know what I mean? The numbers were a little different. All right, and when you look at dinosaurs, they were the pussycats of those times before the flood.
The 3-year-old is not in the Torah.
No, it
It's
doesn't
in the
enter.
oral.
Oral Torah, yeah.
It's in the Hadith.
Anyways, let's not get stuck in that point. I know I shouldn't have said it. Sorry, but anyways, what happens here is that God answers him before he finishes talking. Is that amazing? He's not even finished talking, and the woman comes out. And he asks about, hey, dude, yeah, she says, can I have a drink? And she's like, drink? Why don't I give you a drink and all your men a drink and all your camels a drink? All by herself. And that's it, done deal. So here you see 1 of 3 people in the Torah whose prayers are answered immediately. I mean, Eliezer actually is more than the 2 others. Who are the 2 other people that got their prayers answered?
Moshe, you said.
Moses, in the case of, let me find it for you actually. It was in the story of Korach, right? In the story of Korach, when Korach tries to rebel, it's the cousin of Moses. He's the cousin of Moses, and he tries to rebel against Moses, and he rouses up a whole rabble, and okay, whatever. I'll see the exact whatever. It doesn't matter. I don't waste time. So what happens is that it says ledaber, and it was as soon as Moses finished praying, that the ground opened up. Here it is. If you turn to page 927. Moses is basically making them a deal. He's like, listen, guys, you guys are trying to prove that I'm a fraud. You're trying to say that I'm a fraud, that I elected my own family, nepotism. Aaron should be the high priest, and I should be the Rebbe, right? Who's saying this, by the way, is Korach, who's Moses' cousin.
Right.
He's accusing Moses of nepotism. The cousin is accusing him of nepotism. I guess he's accusing him of selective nepotism, right? Ed Hockman, great to see you, my friend. Shalom Aleichem. We miss you, inshallah. Anyway, but it's beautiful that in the modern technology age, we're able to still study together, even if you are where you are. And Lane, good morning. Boker Tov HaKohen. So, what happened here is that Moses says, look, if you say I'm a fraud, okay, let's prove it. Bottom of page 924, it's like the middle of page 924. Moses said, with this you will know that God sent me to do all these deeds, appointing Aaron as the high priest, his sons as regular priests, and Elitzaphan, the prince of the clan of Kehat, and that I did not devise this myself. Turn to 927. If these men die as all men die, and the fate of all men be visited upon them, then God has not sent me, then I'm a fraud. But if God creates a new creation, namely that the earth opens its mouth, swallows them, and all that is theirs, and they descend alive into the grave, you will know that these men have indeed provoked God, and that I've spoken only on his authority. If God created the earth with the potential to open its mouth, let this potential be manifest now. If he did not, let him create it anew. So this is a big call that Moses does, right? But you know who else did this? By the way, it was Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus arrived in Jamaica. And do you know the story? Tell me if you know the story. And when he arrived there, the men of his ships were threatening a mutiny. They were frustrated. They ran out of food. They were trying to go to India. The people weren't speaking Indian, I guess. they thought they're in the West Indies, right? They didn't know. They were very frustrated. They wanted to rebel against them because they ran out of food. So Christopher Columbus needed to broker a deal in order to get them food from the locals. The problem was the Jamaicans didn't want to sell them food. So what happened? Did you know that the Indians that lived in Manhattan sold the island of Manhattan to the Dutch for a whopping $23? $24?
That's what I thought.
$24? Do you know that if they would have invested that $24? Are you sure it's $24? If they would have invested that $24 at 7% in 1623, then 400 years later, it would have been worth $24 trillion. Do you know that?
The value of Manhattan?
7% a year. What's called accumulating interest, compounding interest. Right. Anyways, back to the story. So Jamaica, what happened was, Christopher Columbus tells the locals, if you don't sell me food, then I'm going to make the sun disappear today. The sun is going to disappear today. Now he was armed. Remember, Christopher Columbus, according to many, was a secret Jew who escaped the Spanish Inquisition on the very date, on the 9th of Av, on the very date of the beginning of the expulsion, the Edict of Expulsion, the 9th of Av of the year 1492. He was armed by information from Rabbi Abraham Zakuta, who was a brilliant astronomer, who told him about the astronomical charts, and he told him when there was going to be a solar eclipse in the West Indies. So when he got there, he said, today's the day, there's going to be a solar eclipse, and he used that as a threat to the Jamaicans that refused to give him food, but when they saw the sun disappearing, they got terrified, and they sold him food, and that's how Columbus was able to continue on his journey.
Is that in the oral Torah or the written?
This is not in the oral Torah.
Is it anecdotal? Or
look it up. It's a real story. Look up the story. Avram Zakuto and Christopher Columbus and the solar eclipse, of course. Anyway, so what happened was that as soon as he finished speaking all these words, the earth beneath them split open. So just like Columbus, who threatened to hide the sun, Moses threatens that the earth will swallow them up. A sinkhole, effectively. And what happened was, it says as soon as he finished speaking all these words. But look at the difference. Here it says as soon as he finished speaking all these words. What page are we on? Remind me.
139.
139. On our page, 139, it says not as soon as he finished speaking. It says
145.
Why 145? No, you're okay.
Oh, the initial one.
139. Here. Verse 15 on 139, he had not yet finished speaking to when the 3-year-old Rivka came out, right? In other words, so Moses was, as soon as he finished speaking, the sinkhole opened. In the case of Eliezer, it was before he even finished praying. God answers him. How does this happen? The last one is not in the Torah, it's in the prophet, in the Tanakh, where it says that Shlomo HaMelech was asking for the inauguration of the Holy Temple, and he wanted a sign that all the hard work of the people that was blessed by God. So it says, as soon as Solomon finished praying to God, the fire descended out of heaven. There was like a lightning strike. This is in Chronicles 2, chapter 7, the beginning of chapter 7. It says that as soon as he finished praying, the fire came out of heaven and lit up the altar. So that's how they knew God is with us, right? So the question is, why these 3 people? It's quite an unlikely bunch. I mean, Moses and Solomon, fine. You know, some of the holiest Jews who ever lived. But Eliezer, he's not even Jewish. How does he fit in here? And how does he get a prayer before them? Like, what's going on over here? The Rebbe points out that actually what's going on over here is that it wasn't the content of their characters, but rather the color of their skin. I'm joking. No, it wasn't the content of the characters. It was the content of their prayers. That was the reason for their expedited response, because all three of them had a single theme in their prayer. They had a uniting theme in their prayer: the prayer of Solomon for the Holy Temple, the prayer of Moses for the sinkhole, and the prayer of Eliezer for the wife. Why were they all the same? The reason they were all the same is because each one of them was praying for God's presence to be revealed in this world. In the case of King Solomon, he was praying that God's presence should descend in space. Should descend into the space of this world. That's what he was praying for. He was praying that the place of the Holy Temple, Jerusalem, the Temple Mount, should be designated as a place where God can dwell in this world. That's the purpose of the Mikdash, and they shall build for me a temple, a sanctuary, and I shall dwell amongst them. This is a place where God was manifest. Remember that infinity was manifest in the Holy Temple, inside of the Holy of Holies. Why? In the Holy of Holies, remember there was the Ark of the Covenant, housing the 2 tablets of Moses, right, from Sinai. When you measured the Holy Ark, it was measuring 2.5 cubits length. But if you measured wall to the edge of the Ark, it took up no space. In other words, wall to wall and wall to the edge of the Ark, wall to the edge of the Ark was the same thing. So the Ark took up no space. It was there, it took up 2.5 cubits, but at the same time, it didn't actually take up the space. It was a miraculous paradox of existence, right? Why? How could that possibly be? How could it take up space and not take up space at the same time? Because it is the manifestation of infinity. Just like the burning bush, which was burning and not being consumed at the same time. Just like the Hanukkah miracle, the Hanukkah oil, which was burning and not burning at the same, not being consumed at the same time. This is the manifestation. That's what a miracle is. A miracle is overriding the laws of nature. It is a place where God's presence is dwelling. This is the prayer of Solomon, that God should dwell in space. In the case of Moses was praying that God should dwell where? Within the person. He was saying, I need to prove to you that I'm not a fraud, and that I was chosen, in fact, by God, that God rests not only in a place, but that God rests in a person. That there is a Rebbe in every generation. Korach did not believe in a Rebbe. He was like, we're all good. We don't need a leader. We don't need a Rebbe. We don't need a Moses. We all can go direct to God Almighty. And Moses was saying, no, you need a Rebbe. That's I was chosen by God. And that's why it was so critical. Same exact theme the Rebbe points out, that he was showing the purpose of the sinkhole was to prove that God had chosen a person. This, by the way, is one of the 13 principles of faith, as documented by Maimonides, that God chooses to dwell his presence in a prophet. Right? Yes, Mordechai.
Didn't God show his presence on October 7th in a sense, because it could have been a lot worse, because the miracle that they just only attacked from
How did you feel that one, Rabbi? I'm busy right now.
It's one way to look at it.
I'm going to withhold comment on that
Okay.
for fear of creating
Okay.
Mutiny in Jamaica.
Now look, Mordechai, with respect to your question, I think honestly, it's too recent.
Mhm.
It's too raw for us to talk about. I mean, we could probably talk about the Crusades. We could probably talk about the Spanish Inquisition like that. But for us to talk about, I mean, we still have hostages in Gaza.
Open trauma.
It's an active, open trauma. We haven't even resolved it. We don't even understand what President Trump is doing in the deal that he's making with the devil. I don't even understand that. What is he trying to make safe passage for these bloodthirsty terrorists that are ratted out in their holes right now? Why don't we smoke them out and kill these murderers? Right? We don't even understand. It's an active duty trauma. For us to comment on that, on what's actually going on, I think is just is I would gonna say emotionally insensitive. Okay, so I'm gonna withhold comment on that. Right? Is that fair enough for the lawyer?
No.
That's his
Legal
forte.
position? Good, thank you. Abstain. Good. Fine. Finally, the last one, of course, is Eliezer. And Eliezer is interesting. So we can clearly understand why Moses and Shlomo are praying to bring Hashem's presence into this world. But the Rebbe points out that Eliezer's prayer was exactly the same thing. Eliezer is bringing the first marriage in the Torah to fruition. He's bringing the holiness of Yitzchak. This is the first guy born as a Jew. in history. Nobody else in history was born Jewish. He was brised on the 8th day. He was known as an Ola Tamima, which means a perfect offering. He was offered upon the altar, and he was not allowed to leave the land of Israel, just like an offering of Ola is not allowed to leave the borders of the land of Israel. Yitzchak never, in fact, left the borders of the land of Israel. And who's he bringing him to marry? A girl from Iraq, right? I mean, yes, a relative, but she was growing up in the house of the corrupt Betuel. Her father was trying to poison Eliezer. Lavan, who ends up bringing misery to the life of Jacob eventually years later in the Torah. I mean, she grows up as the rose amongst the thorns, right? And so what he's doing is the marriage of Eliezer and Rivka, the Rebbe explains, is a merger of heaven and earth. Our sages say that the reason why there's such a long narrative in Torah, you know, the Torah spends so much time going through, first of all, the story of Eliezer. Then the recounting of the story when Eliezer talks to the father, he tells the whole story all over again. You know how many times the Torah could have just said, he showed up and he met Rivka. 4 words we could have said, right? Instead, we got 2 columns of Torah here, right? You know how many laws of Torah are just merely hinted at because there's an extra letter? You know how we know that that on Sukkot, there's a special funnel on the altar that we pour water. Every day of the altar, you pour wine. There's wine libations. But on Sukkot, you pour, in addition to the wine libations, you pour water libations. How do we know that there's water libations? Because if you listen closely to the Torah reading on Sukkot, it says, V'niskehem unesacheha. So that V'niskehem has an extra mem. The V'nesacheha has an extra yud, and there's a mem, yud, mem, which is a hidden 3 letters, mayim, which means water, and that's how we know there's water libations. Here we got a whole story here, told twice. Why do we have this story? Our sages tell us that the story of Eliezer's descent to find a wife for Yitzchak and Rivka is more important even more important than Torah. To quote, the Gemara says that the narratives of the servants of the patriarchs is even more precious than the Torah of the sons.
Wow.
What does that mean? Because Eliezer specifically was engaging with bringing heaven down to earth. Because he was bringing Yitzchak down to Rivka. He was infusing, remember the word chasan and chasan kala. Chasan kala, bride and groom. Chasan means in Hebrew descent. Nochi stariga means to descend, and kala is kalei sanefesh, like elevation of the soul. So the bride and the groom, they kind of meet in the middle. He comes down, she comes up, right? She represents earthliness, he represents spirituality, and this is the marriage of the spiritual and the physical together in the purpose for which God created the world, not for us to become abstract, aloof, and in our silos, but rather for us to engage in this world and to infuse holiness into every aspect of this physical and mundane world. And that is what the significance of the prayer of Eliezer was, that Eliezer's prayer was essentially laid the groundwork for the Torah to proceed, where we are able now to infuse holiness into every single item that we encounter, into every problem that we encounter. This all began with Eliezer, just like Shlomo praying to infuse God into the temple space, and Moshe praying to infuse God into the person. Eliezer is the first one who's trying to infuse God in general into physicality. Remember, it didn't happen until 2,448 years after creation, when God eventually comes down to Mount Sinai. But Eliezer is the one who brokers the deal. He's the ultimate broker. He's the deal maker he negotiates a passage, a bridge between heaven and earth. And that's the extraordinary novelty of Eliezer, why it takes such a dominant theme in this Torah portion. So when you read the Torah portion, don't just look at it like, a lengthy narrative. Read it as the bridge between heaven and earth, and recognize and realize that if we can only do the same thing, if we would only be able to focus our efforts in the same direction, to be able to think about everything that you pray for, don't do it for your own personal gain, but have in mind that the project that you're working on is in fact intended to bridge heaven and earth. If your intention is self-gain, you might struggle. But if your intention is to infuse heaven into earth, like Solomon, Moses, and Eliezer, then like them, your prayers will be answered immediately as you finish, or maybe even before you finish, like Eliezer. It all depends on your kavanah, on your intention. So when you're doing the deal, when you're building the house, when you're building the business, when you're negotiating the contract, Are you focused on the I, or are you focused on the bigger picture? Is it about your personal gain, or is it about the infusion of God's plan into this world? If it's the latter, Eved Avraham Anochi, the servant of Abraham am I. Not I am the servant of Abraham, but the servant of Abraham am I. It's then that you will experience divine intervention, Godspeed.
Great class, Rabbi.
But that's somewhat contrary to what you said before, which is that when you pray, you should pray for personal gain, because to think that whatever you get or you can get is based on you yourself and is not with the help of Hashem would be egotistical. So when you say, God, I need this, I need this, I need this, you're supposed to, you told us you have to ask for it.
You should ask for it. For sure you should. Who else are you going to turn to?
So, and you said, people say, oh, I want peace on earth. I want the weather to be good. I want climate change. No.
Why do you
That's the
want
person's
your bank account to overflow? Why? For personal gain, or in order to be able to do lots of mitzvahs? Have in mind the right intention. Have in mind the right intention, and God will bless your actions. Be like Solomon, be like Moses, be like Eliezer, and God will bless your actions.
Is that a question? Are you still on?
No more.